The metal door slid open with a sound that made Captain Han Mira lift her head. She had been sitting against the cold wall of her cell for 3 hours now, watching the shadows move across the floor as the station rotated through artificial day and night cycles. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder from yesterday's interrogation, and her left eye was still swollen from the guard who did not like her silence. 2 Valkresh guards entered first. They were tall creatures, almost 7 feet, with gray-scaled skin and eyes that reflected light like a cat. Their claws made clicking sounds on the floor. Behind them came Warden Krelthar, the one who ran this prison station. He was bigger than the others, with scars across his face that told stories of many fights. "Human," Krelthar said. His voice was deep and rough. "You have been difficult. You do not answer questions. You do not show fear. You think you are strong?" Mira said nothing. She had learned that silence was sometimes the only weapon a prisoner had. The warden moved closer. "Your people think they are special, but you are weak. Your bodies are soft. You have no claws, no scales, no natural weapons. You are prey animals who learn to use tools, nothing more." Mira met his eyes. She had heard this speech before in different words from different captors. The Valkresh believed they were the perfect predators. They built their entire empire on this belief. Every other species was either food or slaves. "I have decided on your punishment," Krelthar continued. A smile showed his sharp teeth. "We have 3 young ones, cubs. They are being trained for military service. But they have not eaten in 4 days. They are very hungry now." He paused, watching for her reaction. Mira kept her face empty. "You will be placed in a cell with them. Let us see how long your human courage lasts when you face real predators who want to eat you. Perhaps you will finally scream. Perhaps you will beg. Or perhaps," he leaned closer, "they will simply tear you apart. Either way, you will learn your place." The guards pulled Mira to her feet. They dragged her through corridors that smelled like metal and something else, something animal. Other prisoners watched through the small windows in their doors as she passed. Some were human. Most were other species the Valkresh had conquered. All of them had the same look in their eyes, fear mixed with hopelessness. They stopped at a larger cell. The door was reinforced, built to hold something dangerous. Through the small window, Mira could see movement inside, shadows that moved with animal grace. "The cubs are young," Krelthar said, "only 15 years old. In human years, perhaps 16 or 17. Old enough to kill, but young enough to still be wild. They have been raised in captivity, trained to be soldiers. But they have never hunted real prey. You will be there first." The door opened. The guards threw Mira inside. She stumbled but managed to stay on her feet. The door slammed shut behind her with a sound like thunder. The cell was larger than her previous one, maybe 20 feet square. There were no windows except for the small observation port in the door. The light came from strips in the ceiling that gave everything a harsh blue color. 3 shapes moved in the shadows at the far end of the cell. 3 young Valkresh, smaller than the adults but still dangerous. Their scales were darker, not yet fully hardened. Their eyes glowed in the dim light. The biggest one stepped forward first. He was maybe 5.5 feet tall, with broad shoulders and claws that looked sharp even from across the cell. His movements were aggressive, full of young male confidence. This one wanted to prove himself. The second one was more cautious, slightly smaller with lighter-colored scales. He moved to the side, trying to flank her. This one was thinking, planning. More dangerous in some ways than the aggressive one. The third one stayed back, the smallest of the 3. And Mira could see the difference immediately. While the other 2 moved with predatory confidence, this one seemed uncertain, maybe even frightened. Its scales were the palest, almost silver in the blue light. They circled her slowly. Mira did not move. She stood in the center of the cell and watched them with calm eyes. She had grown up on an agricultural colony called New Manitoba. It was a world where humans had to share space with the local wildlife, including several predator species. Her father had been a wildlife manager. He had taught her everything about predators. The first rule he taught her was simple: never run from a predator unless you know you can escape. Running triggers the chase instinct. It marks you as prey. The second rule was equally important: watch their body language. Predators communicate with every movement. They tell you what they are thinking if you know how to read them. Mira watched these 3 cubs now. The big one, the aggressive one, was broadcasting his intentions clearly. His shoulders were raised, his head low. He was preparing to attack. But there was something wrong with his stance. His weight was too far forward. He was ready to lunge, but he had not thought about what would happen after the lunge. The cautious one was better. He moved with more control, but he kept looking at the big one, waiting for a signal. He was not a leader. He was a follower. The small one in the back was not watching Mira at all. It was watching the other two. There was fear in its body language, but also something else. Curiosity, maybe, or doubt. Outside the cell, through the observation window, Mira could see faces pressed against the glass. Guards had come to watch. Some had probably placed bets on how long she would survive. This was entertainment for them. The aggressive cub made a low growling sound. It came from deep in his chest, a sound meant to frighten. Mira did not react. She simply looked at him. Really looked at him. And then she spoke. "You are hungry," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. "I can see it in how you move. Your muscles are weak. You have not eaten in days. That is why they put you here. They want you to kill me." The cub seemed confused by this. Prey was not supposed to talk. Prey was supposed to run or scream or beg. "But you are not real hunters," Mira continued. "You have been raised in cages, fed from buckets, trained to kill on command. You are more like weapons than predators. Tools for the Empire," the big one snarled. He did not like her words. Good. Anger made predators sloppy. "Watch," Mira said, and then she did something that made all three cubs freeze. She sat down, right there in the center of the cell. She crossed her legs and placed her hands on her knees. A meditation pose, a position of complete vulnerability. The cubs did not know what to do with this. Outside, she could hear the guards talking in surprised voices. "If you want to kill me," Mira said, "then kill me. But I will not make it easy for you. I will not run. I will not scream. I will not beg, because I am not prey. And if you kill me like this, sitting here calm, you will learn nothing. You will just be doing what the warden wants, following orders, like good little tools," the aggressive cub roared. It was a sound full of frustration and hunger. Then it charged. The cub crossed the distance in 3 powerful strides. Its claws were extended, reaching for Mira's throat. The watching guards leaned closer to the window. Some of them made excited sounds. At the last possible moment, Mira moved. It was not a big movement. She simply shifted her weight and turned her shoulder. The cub's claws passed through empty air where her neck had been a second before. The momentum of his charge carried him past her. He stumbled off balance and nearly fell. Mira was back in her sitting position before the cub could turn around. She had not even stood up. "Poor form," she said calmly. "You put all your strength into the charge. No balance. No control. If I had been another predator instead of prey, you would be dead now. I could have struck you while you were off balance." The cub stared at her. His chest was heaving from the effort of the charge, and from hunger. Mira could see how thin he was under his scales. They had starved these cubs to make them desperate. The cautious cub moved forward now. He approached from the side, more carefully than his aggressive friend. His movements were controlled, but Mira could see he was just as hungry, just as weak. "Better," Mira said, watching him. "You are thinking more. Moving with purpose, but you are still making a mistake." "What mistake?" The words came from the small cub in the back, the one who had stayed out of the fight. Its voice was younger than the others, higher. Mira realized this cub was female. "You are hunting me alone," Mira said. "Each of you thinking only about yourself. But real predators work together. Wolves hunt in packs. Lions have pride. Even earth sharks will cooperate when hunting large prey. You have numbers. You could use them, but you do not know how." The 3 cubs looked at each other. It was clear this idea had never occurred to them. They had been trained as individuals, as weapons, not as a pack. Mira slowly stood up. The cubs tensed, ready to attack, but she just brushed dust off her torn uniform and looked at them with calm eyes. "I am going to make you an offer," she said. "The warden expects you to kill me. He wants me to die screaming, and he wants you to become killers. He thinks this will break both of us. But I have a different idea." "What idea?" the small female asked. Her voice was curious now, not afraid. "I will teach you," Mira said. "Teach you to be real hunters. Not weapons, not tools. Real predators who understand what hunting means. Who know the difference between killing for food and killing for pleasure." "Who?" The artificial dawn came slowly to the cell. The blue lights gradually brightened to white, mimicking a sunrise that none of them would ever see naturally. Mira had not slept much. She had spent the night watching the three cubs, learning their patterns. Thrax had paced for hours, restless with hunger and frustration. His energy was high but unfocused. He moved like a caged animal, which is exactly what he was. Eventually, exhaustion forced him to sleep, but even then his muscles twitched with dreams of hunting. Ven had been more controlled. He had settled into a corner and watched Mira with intelligent eyes. He was thinking, processing, trying to understand what game she was playing. He had slept lightly, waking several times to check if she had moved. Scylla had surprised Mira the most. After an hour of nervous energy, the young female had curled up near the other two and fallen into deep sleep. She was the youngest, and her body needed rest more than her mind needed answers. But before sleeping, she had asked Mira 3 questions about Earth, about what trees looked like, about whether the sky was really blue. Now, as the lights brightened, all 3 cubs stirred. Their hunger would be worse today. Mira knew this. On the second day without food, the body starts consuming itself. The mind becomes clouded with need. Discipline becomes harder. Thrax was the first to wake fully. He stood and stretched, his joints cracking. His eyes immediately found Mira. The hunger in those eyes was deeper now, more primal. "You promised to teach us," he said. His voice was rough, strained. "Teach us or I will attack again, and this time I will not miss." Mira stood slowly. Her own body was stiff from a night on the hard floor, but she showed no pain. "Good," she said. "You are motivated. Hunger is a powerful teacher. But first you need to understand something important." Ven and Scylla were awake now too, watching. "What you felt last night," Mira continued, "when your attack failed. That was not weakness. That was information. Every failed hunt teaches you something, but only if you pay attention." She began to pace slowly, keeping distance between herself and the cubs. "Tell me, Thrax, when you charged at me yesterday, what were you thinking about?" Thrax's tail lashed. "I was thinking about killing you. About ending this." "Exactly," Mira said. "You were thinking about the result, not the process. Real hunters think about every step. They plan the approach. They calculate the distance. They watch for the exact moment when the prey is vulnerable." She stopped pacing and looked at all 3 of them. "Where I grew up, on New Manitoba, we lived near a species called the northern razor cat. They were apex predators. 300 pounds of muscle and claws. They could kill a full-grown human in seconds." Scylla leaned forward, interested despite her hunger. "But do you know what we learned about them?" Mira asked. "They spent hours preparing for a hunt. Sometimes a full day. They would track prey, learn its patterns, understand its habits, and then when they finally attacked, it was over in seconds. One perfect strike, no wasted energy. No unnecessary suffering," Ven spoke up. "But we do not have hours. We are starving now." "True," Mira agreed. "Which is why you need to learn faster. Right now you are trying to hunt with brute force, but I am going to teach you to hunt with intelligence, with strategy, with understanding." She moved to the center of the cell. "Come here. All 3 of you. Form a circle around me. Keep your distance for now. About 10 feet. The cubs looked at each other uncertainly, but slowly they moved into position. Thrax across from Ven, Scylla between them. Mira stood in the center. "Now," Mira said, "watch me closely. Not just my body. Watch everything. My breathing, my eyes, my weight distribution. Where are my hands? Where am I looking? What signals am I giving you?" She began to move slowly, turning so she could see all 3 of them. Every living thing communicates through body language. "Right now I'm telling you many things. Can you read them?" Scylla spoke first, surprising everyone. "Your eyes. You keep looking at Thrax. You think he will attack first," Mira smiled. "Good, yes, Thrax is the most aggressive, the most likely to lose control. What else?" Ven studied her for a moment. "Your feet. They are positioned so you can move in any direction quickly. You are ready to dodge." "Excellent," Mira said. "Anything else?" Thrax growled. "Your breathing is steady. You are not afraid." "Also true," Mira acknowledged. "Fear makes prey predictable. Calm makes prey dangerous. This is your first lesson in reading body language. Now let me teach you about pack hunting." She pointed at Thrax. "You are strong, fast. Your role in a pack would be to chase, to put pressure on prey, to force mistakes." She pointed at Ven. "You are patient, thoughtful. Your role would be to plan, to position yourself where the prey will run, to wait for the right moment." Then she looked at Scylla. "And you. You are young, smaller, but you are observant. You notice things the others miss. Your role would be to scout, to watch for dangers, to alert the pack when something changes. Scylla seemed pleased by this. No one had ever told her she was useful before. Now, Mira said, try to hunt me. But this time work together. Thrax, you pressure me. Then you anticipate where I will move. Scylla, you watch for patterns in my movement. Tell them what you see. The three cubs looked at each other. This was new. They had never worked together before. In their training, cooperation was seen as weakness. Each cub was supposed to be a perfect killer on their own. But hunger was a powerful motivator. And curiosity stronger still. Thrax moved first. He came at Mira from the front, claws extended but moving slower this time. More controlled. Mira sidestepped as she had before. But this time Ven was ready. He had positioned himself where she moved, forcing her to change direction again. She always moves to her right, Scylla called out. When she dodges, she goes right. Mira smiled even as she moved. The cubs were learning. Thrax adjusted his next approach, trying to force her left. Ven moved to cut off her right side. Scylla watched, calling out observations. For 5 minutes they continued this strange dance. The cubs never quite caught her, but they came closer each time. They were starting to communicate with looks, with small sounds, with positioning. They were becoming a pack. Finally, Mira raised her hand. Stop, she said. Good, much better. You are learning to coordinate, to use your different strengths together. This is what real predators do. The cubs were panting, but there was something new in their eyes. Not just hunger, interest, pride even. But there is something more important you need to understand, Mira said. Something the Valkresh Empire never taught you. Hunting is not just about the kill. It is about sustainability, about respect, about understanding your place in the ecosystem. Thrax shook his head. What does that mean? Ecosystem? Mira sat down, and after a moment the cubs did too. They formed a rough circle, predator and prey, teacher and students. An ecosystem is everything that lives in a place, Mira explained. The prey, the predators, the plants, the insects. Everything connected. And in a healthy ecosystem, predators do not just kill. They maintain balance. They keep prey populations healthy by taking the sick and weak. They prevent overgrazing. They are part of a system, not masters of it. Ven frowned. But the Empire teaches that we are masters, that the Valkresh are the top of everything, that other species exist to serve us. Yes, Mira said quietly, and that is why your empire is failing. Because you do not understand the first rule of being a predator. What rule? Scylla asked, leaning forward. Mira looked at each of them. You need the prey to survive. If you kill all the prey, what will you eat? If you take everything, there is nothing left for tomorrow. True predators understand this. They hunt what they need, not everything they can kill. They respect the prey because without prey there are no predators. Silence filled the cell. This was a revolutionary idea for cubs raised in the Valkresh military system. But we are hungry now, Thrax said, though his voice was less aggressive than before. This knowledge does not feed us. No, Mira agreed. It does not. And I wish I could feed you. But I have nothing to give. What I can give you is this understanding. When you leave this cell, when you are hunters in the real world, you will remember these lessons. You will know that there is a difference between being a killer and being a predator, between taking life without thought and taking life with purpose. She stood and moved to the wall. From a small tear in her uniform pocket, she pulled out something. It was tiny, barely visible. A protein bar no bigger than her thumb that she had managed to hide from the guards during her capture. The cubs' eyes fixed on it immediately. Their bodies tensed. The smell of food, however small, triggered every hunting instinct they had. I have been rationing this, Mira said, taking tiny pieces to maintain my strength. This is all that is left. It is not enough to truly feed any of us, but it is a gesture. She broke it into 3 pieces, though calling them pieces was generous. They were crumbs, really. But she walked to each cub and offered 1 piece to each. Thrax snatched his immediately, swallowing it in 1 gulp. It was gone before he could taste it. Ven took his more carefully but ate it just as quickly. Scylla stared at hers for a long moment before eating it slowly, trying to make it last. The food did nothing to satisfy their hunger. If anything, it made it worse. But something else had happened. Mira, their designated prey, had shared what little she had with them. 3 days had passed in the cell. 3 days that felt like 3 years to the cubs and 3 lifetimes to the guards watching. The food deprivation was reaching critical levels. Thrax's ribs were visible now beneath his scales. Ven moved with the slow, careful motions of someone conserving every calorie. Scylla was the worst. Being the youngest, her body had fewer reserves. She slept most of the time, waking only for the lessons. But the lessons continued. Every day Mira taught them something new about hunting, about predators, about the balance between life and death. Today, she sat with them in the center of the cell and told them stories. Stories about Earth. On Earth, she began, there was a predator called the wolf. Gray wolves. They lived in packs like you three are learning to do. But their hunting was not just about skill. It was about rules. About ethics. Scylla lifted her head weakly. Ethics? What is that word? Ethics, Mira explained, are the rules you follow even when no one is watching. The choices you make about right and wrong. For wolves, hunting ethics meant they never took more than they needed. They never killed for fun. They cared for the sick in their pack. They raised their young together. They understood that being strong meant protecting the weak, not destroying them. Thrax's voice was bitter. The Empire has no such rules. They teach us that mercy is weakness, that caring is failure, that the only purpose of strength is to dominate. I know, Mira said softly, but that is not the way of true predators. Let me tell you about another Earth predator, the lion. Male lions are massive, powerful. They could easily kill the females in their pride or the cubs, but they do not. Instead, they protect them. They share food with them. They play with the young ones to teach them. Strength used to protect is far greater than strength used to destroy. Ben was listening intently. But why? If they are strong enough to take everything, why share? Mira smiled. Because a lion alone will die. A pride survives. The female lions are the better hunters. The cubs are the future. A male lion who kills his pride becomes a lone predator, and lone predators do not last long. By protecting the weak, he protects himself. By sharing, he ensures the pride continues. It is not weakness. It is wisdom, she looked at Thrax. You are like a young male lion, strong, aggressive, full of energy. But without Ven's careful thinking and Scylla's sharp observation, you are just strength without direction. Together you are a pride. Alone you are nothing. Thrax did not argue this time. He was thinking. Tell us more about Earth, Scylla said. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were bright with interest. What was it like? Mira closed her eyes, remembering. Earth was beautiful. Blue oceans that covered most of the planet, green forests that seemed to go on forever, mountains that touched the sky. And life, so much life. Millions of species, all connected, all dependent on each other. But humans were predators there too, yes? Ven asked. You hunted? Yes, Mira said. We hunted. For thousands of years we were hunters, but we learned something important. We learned that the best hunters are not the ones who kill the most. They are the ones who understand the most. She opened her eyes and looked at them. Humans became apex predators not because we were the strongest or the fastest. We were not. We were weaker than bears, slower than cheetahs. Our claws were pathetic compared to tigers. Our teeth could not tear through hide like wolves. Then how? Thrax asked, genuinely curious now. We thought, Mira said simply. We observed. We learned. We cooperated. We made tools. We shared knowledge across generations. We understood that the real power was not in our bodies but in our minds. And most importantly, we learned from the other predators around us. She stood and began to pace, her movements slow to conserve energy. There was a tribe of humans called the Sand People. They lived in a desert in Africa. Very harsh environment, little water, difficult to find food. But they were amazing hunters. Do you know what their greatest weapon was? The cubs shook their heads. Persistence, Mira said. They would track an animal for hours, sometimes days. They would run after it, not fast but steady. The animal would run away fast at first, but it would have to stop to rest. And when it stopped, the hunters would appear again. The animal would run, stop. Eventually the animal would be exhausted. It would overheat. And the hunters who had paced themselves, who had thought about every step, would make the kill. Not through strength, through understanding. That is what I am teaching you, she continued. Not how to be stronger. You are already strong. I am teaching you how to think like hunters. How to understand your prey. How to work together. How to know when to hunt and when to wait. How to respect the life you take. Ven spoke up, his voice thoughtful. But the Empire teaches that respect for prey is foolish. That prey exists only to be consumed or enslaved. That showing respect to something weaker than you is a sign that you are not truly strong. Mira sat down across from them. Let me ask you something. When you finally catch prey and kill it, do you eat all of it? Thrax nodded. We are trained to consume everything. Waste nothing. Good, Mira said. That is respect. When you use everything from a kill, you are honoring that life. You are saying, this creature died so I could live and I will not waste that sacrifice. That is the first level of hunting ethics. She continued. The second level is understanding that you should only kill what you need. Not for sport. Not for fun. Not to prove you are strong. Only when you need food or when you need to defend yourself or your pack. Every unnecessary death weakens the ecosystem. It takes prey away from other predators. It disrupts the balance. Scylla raised her head. But the Empire conquers worlds and takes everything. All the resources. All the prey. They leave nothing behind. Yes, Mira said quietly. And that is why your empire will eventually fall. Because you cannot sustain that forever. When you take everything from every world, eventually there is nothing left to take. You become predators who have killed all their prey. And then what do you eat? The silence that followed was heavy. The cubs had never thought about this. They had been raised to believe in the Empire's endless strength, its eternal dominance. The idea that it could fall was like suggesting the stars might stop shining. Outside the cell, the guards were having their own discussions. What they were witnessing was unprecedented. A human was systematically dismantling everything they had been taught about strength, about predators, about the natural order. And the cubs were listening. More than listening, they were believing. One of the younger guards, a Valkresh named Corvin, could not stop watching the monitors. He had been raised in the military from birth, just like these cubs. He had killed his first prey at age 12. He had never questioned the Empire's ways. But now, listening to this human speak, he felt something strange. Doubt, curiosity, and something that felt dangerously like hope. Inside the cell, Thrax spoke. His voice was different now. Less aggressive. More thoughtful. If we learn these things you teach, if we understand about balance and respect and hunting ethics, what do we do with this knowledge? We are prisoners of the system. We cannot change it. Mira smiled, though the effort clearly cost her. She was weak now too, as weak as the cubs. You may not be able to change the entire empire. But you can change yourselves. And when you change yourself, you change how you interact with the world. Maybe you teach others what you learned. Maybe those others teach more. Change does not happen all at once. It spreads like ripples in water. One predator with ethics, she said, is just one predator. But what if there were 10, 100, 1,000? What if an entire generation of young Valkresh learned to hunt with wisdom instead of just violence? What would your empire become then? Ven was the first to speak. It would become something different. Something better. Yes, Mira agreed. And that is worth fighting for. That is worth suffering for. That is why I am here, teaching you, even though I am as hungry as you are, even though every day in this cell might be my last. Because if I can plant these ideas in your minds, if I can show you there is another way, then maybe something beautiful can grow from this terrible situation. Scylla moved closer to Mira. It was a dangerous thing to do. She was a predator moving toward prey. Every instinct told her to attack, but instead she simply sat next to Mira, not touching but close. You are not prey, Scylla said quietly. You are pack. Mira felt tears in her eyes. It was the highest compliment a Valkresh could give. To call someone pack was to say they belonged, that they were family. Thrax and Ven looked at each other. Then slowly they moved closer as well. The four of them sat in a circle. 3 young predators and 1 human. 3 students and 1 teacher. 3 cubs and their unlikely pack leader. Outside, Warden Krelthar watched with growing anger. This was not what was supposed to happen. The cubs should have killed the human days ago. Instead, they were bonding with her, learning from her, becoming something he did not recognize. He made a decision. Tomorrow he would end this. He would either force the cubs to kill, or he would kill them all himself. This experiment in torture had become something else entirely, and he would not allow it to continue. The announcement came through the intercom at dawn. Warden Krelthar's voice filled the cell, cold and final. Cubs, you have failed your test. You have spent 5 days with prey and you have not killed. This is unacceptable. You have 48 hours. Kill the human or you will all be terminated. There are no more chances. This ends now. The connection cut off with a sharp click. Silence fell over the cell like a weight. Mira had known this was coming. She had seen the warden's anger growing each day. She had watched him through the observation window, seen his frustration as his torture experiment became something else entirely. A deadline was inevitable. The three cubs stared at her. Their eyes were different now than they had been 5 days ago. There was still hunger there, still the predatory gleam, but there was also conflict, confusion, and something that looked like grief. Thrax stood first. His movements were slow, weakened by starvation, but there was tension in his body. The tension of a predator about to make a choice. "We are dying," he said. His voice was rough, strained. "All of us. We have not eaten in almost a week. Our bodies are consuming themselves. If we do not eat soon, we will be too weak to survive even if they give us food later." Mira nodded. She knew this was true. She could feel her own body shutting down. Her vision blurred at the edges. Her hand shook with weakness. Standing took effort now. "I know," she said quietly. Ven moved to stand beside Thrax. "You have taught us so much. About hunting. About balance. About respect. But you also taught us that predators must eat to survive. That hunting is not wrong when it is done for food with purpose. You said we should only kill what we need, and we need to eat." "I did say that," Mira agreed. She was calm, her voice steady. "I stand by those words. Killing for food is natural. It is the way of the world. Prey feeds predator. That is the cycle." Scylla was crying. Mira had not known that Valkresh could cry until this moment. The young female's eyes were wet and her voice broke when she spoke. "But you are pack," Scylla said. "You said predators protect their pack. That strength is used to defend, not destroy. How can we kill pack?" Mira felt her own tears now. She moved slowly across the cell until she stood in the center. Then she did something that made all three cubs tense. She cut her arm. Not deeply, but enough that blood welled up and the scent filled the air. The effect was immediate. The cubs' nostrils flared. Their pupils dilated. Every predatory instinct in their bodies screamed at them to attack. The smell of blood to a starving predator was like fire to dry wood. Irresistible. Overwhelming. Thrax took a step forward, then another. His claws extended automatically. His body moved without conscious thought, driven by millions of years of evolution and 5 days of starvation. "This is your final lesson," Mira said. Her voice was somehow still steady, still calm. Even as a predator stalked toward her, "You have the opportunity. You have the need. You have the justification. I am prey, you are predators. This is natural. This is right, but," she paused, looking at each of them, "you also have something else now. Knowledge, understanding, ethics. You know the difference between killing because you must and killing because you can. You know what it means to be part of a pack. You know that true strength is not just physical power." Thrax was 3 steps away now. His whole body was shaking with the effort of control, with hunger, with need, with the war between instinct and understanding. "You asked me once," Mira said, speaking to Thrax directly now, "why I would teach you, why I would help you become better hunters when you were supposed to kill me. I told you it was because you are children, because you did not choose this, because you deserved to know what you could be." She smiled, though her vision was blurring now. "But there was another reason, too. In my culture, we had a saying, 'The best teachers are those who empower their students to surpass them.' I taught you so that you could make this choice, so that you could be more than what they made you, so that you could choose your own path." Thrax was 2 steps away, 1 step. He stood over Mira now, his claws extended toward her throat. All he had to do was strike. 1 quick movement and it would be over. He would eat. He would survive. And everything Mira had taught them would mean nothing. But he did not strike. Instead, Thrax made a sound. It was not a roar or a growl. It was something else. Something that sounded like pain. Like a cub crying. Like something breaking inside him. His claws retracted. He stepped back. And then he sat down heavily on the floor, his head in his hands. "I cannot do it," he said. His voice was broken. "I want to. My body is screaming at me to kill you. Every instinct I have is telling me to attack. But I cannot. Because you are right. You are pack. And pack does not kill pack. Not for food. Not for survival. Not for anything." Ven moved forward. He looked at Mira's bleeding arm and his whole body trembled. But he too stepped back. "We choose honor over hunger," he said. We choose wisdom over instinct. We choose to be what you taught us, not what they made us. Scylla was the last to move. She approached Mira slowly and did something that shocked everyone. She tore a piece of cloth from her own sparse covering and wrapped it around Mira's bleeding arm. No more blood, Scylla said firmly. We will starve together as pack. But we will not betray what you taught us. We will not become the killers they want us to be. Outside the cell, chaos had erupted. The guards were talking urgently. Some were arguing. Some were silent, watching with something like awe. Corvin, the young guard who had been watching from the beginning, was one of the silent ones. He had seen everything. He had watched the cubs transform from mindless weapons into thinking beings. He had watched them choose honor over survival. And something in him had changed too. He turned to the other guards. This is wrong, he said. His voice was quiet but firm. What we are witnessing, what the warden is doing, this is not strength. This is not the way of predators. The human is right. We have forgotten what it means to truly hunt. We have become something twisted. An older guard, scarred from many battles, looked at him with hard eyes. Be careful, Corvin. Those words sound like treason. Perhaps, Corvin said. Or perhaps they sound like truth. Our ancestors were noble hunters once. They followed codes. They had honor. When did we lose that? When did we decide that cruelty was the same as strength? Several of the younger guards were nodding now. They too had been watching the monitors. They too had felt something shift inside them as they listened to Mira's lessons. Inside the cell, the four beings sat in a circle again. They were all weak now, all dying slowly, but there was peace in the circle, understanding, something beautiful in the midst of horror. What happens now? Thrax asked. The warden will kill us, all of us. We failed his test. Mira nodded slowly. Probably. But you did not fail. You passed a much more important test. You proved that you are more than weapons, more than what they made you. You are beings with conscience, with choice, with honor. That is worth more than survival. Is it? Van asked. Not challenging, just genuinely wondering. Is honor worth dying for? Yes, Mira said without hesitation. Because if you live without honor, you are already dead. You are just a body walking around, a tool being used. But if you die with honor, you die free. You die as yourself, not as what someone else wanted you to be. Scylla leaned against Mira's shoulder. It was a gesture of trust, of pack, of family. I am glad I met you, she said. I am glad I learned what it means to be a real hunter. Even if I only get to be one for a few more days. The door to the cell suddenly opened. Warden Krelthar entered, flanked by armed guards. His face was twisted with rage. Failures, he snarled. All of you. These cubs were supposed to be soldiers, killers, but you have poisoned them, human. You have filled their heads with weakness. With your prey animal philosophies. With ideas that will destroy them. Mira stood slowly. It took effort, but she faced the warden with her head high. I did not poison them. I freed them. I showed them what they could be. What your ancestors once were before the Empire forgot the difference between hunting and cruelty. Krelthar raised his weapon, pointing it at Mira. Then you will die first, and they will watch. And then they will die too, failures that they are. But before he could fire, something unexpected happened. The three cubs moved. They positioned themselves between Mira and the warden. Their bodies were weak, but their stance was firm, protective. You will have to kill us first, Thrax said. His voice was steady. We will not let you harm our pack. Krelthar stared at them in disbelief. You would die for prey? For a human? You truly are failures. No, Ven said. We would die for principle. For honor. For what we believe is right. That does not make us failures. That makes us free. The warden's claw tightened on his weapon. His face showed his decision. He would kill them all. Right here. Right now. But then Corvin stepped forward. He moved between the warden and the cubs. His own weapon was drawn, but it was pointed at the ground. Warden, Corvin said, I challenge your authority here. What you are doing violates the ancient codes. The codes that our species was founded on. The codes that you have forgotten. Krelthar turned his weapon toward Corvin. You dare question me? 3 weeks had passed since the standoff in the cell. 3 weeks that had changed everything on the prison station. Mira sat in the medical ward, her strength slowly returning. The doctors had said she was fortunate to survive. 5 days without food combined with the stress and injuries had pushed her body to the edge. But humans were resilient, stubborn. She had pulled through. The cubs had recovered faster. Youth and their species' natural endurance meant they bounced back quickly once properly fed. They visited her every day, bringing questions, bringing stories, bringing hope. Today, all three sat around her bed. Thrax was telling her about the training sessions. Not the old brutal training, but new ones. Training that focused on cooperation and strategy instead of just violence. Corvin has been teaching other young guards, Thrax said. His voice had matured over these weeks. Less aggressive, more thoughtful. He tells them the stories you told us. About wolves and lions. About hunting with ethics. Some of them listen. Some do not. But more listen each day, Ven nodded. There is resistance, of course. The older guards, the ones loyal to the warden, they call it weakness. They say we are betraying our nature, but we are not betraying anything. We are reclaiming something that was lost. Scylla moved closer to Mira. Over the past weeks, the young female had become especially attached. She reminded Mira of some of her students back on New Manitoba. Curious, eager to learn, full of potential. The warden tried to have us terminated, Scylla said. 3 times now. But each time, more guards stood with Corvin. Yesterday, when he tried again, 20 guards refused the order. 20 out of 50. That is almost half, Mira smiled. Change spreads like that. Slowly at first. Then faster. Then suddenly everyone looks around and realizes the world has shifted beneath their feet. The door opened and Corvin entered. He had aged in these 3 weeks, or perhaps just matured. There was a weight to him now that had not been there before. The weight of leadership. Of responsibility. Mira, he said, there is news. The Empire has agreed to a prisoner exchange. 3 human officers for you and 20 other human prisoners here. You will be leaving in 2 days. The cubs looked at each other. They had known this would come eventually. That Mira would leave. But knowing it and facing it were different things. That is good news, Mira said quietly. I will be able to go home. See my family again. Return to teaching, she paused. But I will miss you. All of you. You have become important to me. Thrax stood abruptly and walked to the window. His back was to them, but his shoulders were shaking slightly. He was trying not to cry. You saved us, he said, his voice rough. Not from death. From something worse. You saved us from becoming monsters. From being nothing but weapons. How do we thank someone for that? Mira stood slowly and walked to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder. He was so much bigger than her, so much stronger, but in this moment he seemed young and vulnerable. You do not thank me, she said gently. You live. You teach others what you learned. You spread the ideas. You change the world. One person at a time, one choice at a time. That is how you honor what we shared in that cell. Scylla came to stand beside them. Will we ever see you again? I do not know, Mira admitted. The galaxy is large. The war continues. But I hope so. I hope that someday when there is peace I can visit you, see what you have built. Meet the cubs you will teach, then join them. We will build something, he promised. Not just here on this station. We will spread these teachings. Corvin has contacts on other ships, other stations. The idea is spreading. Young Valkresh everywhere are starting to question. Starting to remember what we once were. Corvin cleared his throat. There is more. The warden has been removed from his position. The Empire is investigating him for what they call excessive cruelty. Even by their standards, what he did was too much. He will face trial. Mira raised her eyebrows. That is unexpected. I thought the Empire approved of his methods. They did, Corvin said. But what happened here has caused problems. Word spread. The footage from the cell monitors was leaked. Now citizens across the Empire have seen it. Seen the cubs choosing honor. Seen you teaching them. Seen us standing up to the warden. It has become a symbol. He smiled slightly. The Empire leadership is trying to control the narrative. They are calling Krelthar a rogue, saying his methods were not sanctioned. It is a lie, of course, but it means they are worried. It means they see the change coming and they are trying to get ahead of it. Mira sat back down on the bed, suddenly tired. Change is dangerous. For everyone involved. You know that, Corvin. You and the others who stood with us. You have made yourselves targets. I know, Corvin said seriously. But you taught us something important. You taught us that being a predator is not just about strength. It is about choice, about wisdom, about understanding your place in the larger system. And once you understand that, you cannot go back to ignorance. You cannot unknow what you know. Over the next 2 days, Mira spent as much time as possible with the cubs and with Corvin. She taught them more stories. More lessons. She wanted to give them everything she could before she left. She taught them about ecosystems in detail, how every part depends on every other part, how removing one piece can collapse the whole structure. She taught them about sustainable hunting practices from Earth, about how indigenous peoples had managed wildlife for thousands of years without destroying it. She taught them about different predator species and their unique hunting styles, about how cooperation made packs stronger than individuals, about how the most successful predators were not the most violent but the most adaptable. But most importantly, she taught them about hope, about how even in the darkest situations, even when facing death, there is always a choice, always a chance to be something better than what others expect. On the last day, Scylla gave Mira a gift. It was a small carving made from a piece of metal she had somehow obtained. It showed a human and 3 Valkresh cubs sitting in a circle. The craftsmanship was rough, clearly made by someone learning, but it was beautiful in its sincerity. "This is the Valkresh symbol for honored teacher," Scylla explained, "but I changed it. I added the circle, to show we are pack, to show we are equal, not teacher above students, but pack members learning together." Mira felt tears in her eyes as she accepted the gift. "I will treasure this," she said. "Always." Thrax stepped forward. He looked at Mira for a long moment, then did something that shocked everyone. He knelt. It was a gesture of deep respect in Valkresh culture, a recognition of someone as not just equal, but honored. "You are the first prey who ever made me feel like a true predator," he said, "not because you taught me to kill better, but because you taught me that being a predator means more than killing. It means understanding, respecting, choosing. I will carry these lessons for the rest of my life." Ven knelt beside him. "We will teach others," he promised. "Every cub we meet, every young guard, every Valkresh who will listen. We will spread the hunting ethics. We will rebuild what was lost." Scylla knelt last. "You gave us more than knowledge," she said softly. "You gave us ourselves. You showed us we could choose who to be. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given us." Mira placed her hands on each of their heads in turn. It was a human gesture of blessing, of farewell, of love. "Remember," she said, "being a predator is not about what you can kill. It is about what you choose to protect. Protect each other. Protect the balance. Protect the future." The transport ship arrived that evening. Mira was processed with the other prisoners being exchanged. There were tears, embraces, promises to remember. The cubs watched from a viewing platform as the transport prepared to depart. Before boarding, Mira turned back one last time. She raised her hand in farewell. The 3 cubs raised their claws in return, a mirror of her gesture. A final connection between teacher and students, between prey and predators, between beings who had learned that those categories mattered less than the choices you made. The transport departed. Mira watched through the window as the prison station grew smaller, then disappeared into the darkness of space. She held Scylla's carving in her hands and thought about everything that had happened. They had put her in a cell with hungry cubs to break her. Instead, she had taught them hunting ethics. They had tried to turn her confinement into torture. Instead, she had turned it into a classroom. They had wanted her to die screaming. Instead, she had lived to see change begin. Weeks later, Mira returned to human space. She was debriefed extensively by military intelligence. They were fascinated by her story. Some wanted to use it as propaganda. Others wanted to study what had happened psychologically. But Mira refused to let her experience become a weapon. Instead, she wrote a report, a detailed account of everything she had taught the cubs, everything she had learned about Valkresh culture, everything that had changed on that station. She marked it for distribution to diplomats, to xenobiologists, to anyone who might use the information to build bridges instead of bombs. She returned to teaching, but her classes were different now. She incorporated what she had learned. She taught her students that understanding your enemy was more powerful than hating them, that finding common ground with other species was possible even in the